Hello, and welcome to part 1 of my series, A Journey to Find My Own Artistic Style. If you'd like some context for this series, please go back and check out the introduction video I posted. I'll be uploading all of these into one playlist in case you missed one and want to follow along. Today I'll be using techniques from Stuart Davies, so please go check out his channel if you want to learn how to paint like this. I've titled this video Making Art That Matters to You because before I start experimenting with new styles, I need to make sure that the first thing in my mind is making sure the art means something to me. To illustrate this, I'll explain why this piece, Light in the Storm, meant so much to me. This was the first piece of art I'd worked on in quite some time, so I really wanted to start by painting something very freely. I'd even had the idea of going into the painting live and sharing my thoughts as I painted, and as I started, I was having an exceptional time painting. I felt like my brushstrokes were loose, I felt like the colors were mixing really well, and I was overall really enjoyable. And then, it all went wrong. I started receiving calls from my job, and I started having to spend increasingly long amounts of time away from the piece. Since I follow Stuart Davies' method, I was using a quick-drying linseed oil, so by the time I came back to the painting, it was dry, and it was dark outside. So, instead of doing this all in one go, I had to make this a 2-part painting. I can't fully explain why this stop and go affected me so much, but it really did. My job has been increasingly stressful lately, and I've been working increasingly long and unpredictable hours. So, when my painting was interrupted, it felt like what was supposed to be a quiet and happy place for me had been invaded. In my mind, there was no escape from this towering storm over my life. In the in-between time from part 1 and part 2 of this video, I hesitate to say I had a breakdown, but I really struggled with the feeling of how unable I was to do something that I loved so much, and the impact and negativity that was brought into that space from my job, which previously had not happened. Before this day, I had never had a situation where my job had gotten in the way of my art, or that creative and positive space that I make in my painting room, that was interrupted in any way. So it was something that really, like I said before, affected me deeply, and I found a difficult time trying to figure out how I was going to move forward with the painting after it had stopped, and how I would change the tone of the piece to reflect that. So, what's funny about this is that in my second painting section, I started painting this feeling into the landscape without even realizing it. The towering clouds with the low landscape started to represent the towering stress and the overwhelming burnout I was feeling at work. The landscape started to represent hope for me as I started to incorporate lighter tones on the ground. I paint a tree on the bottom left, and that started to represent me trying to hold on to some semblance of joy in my life, despite all of the difficulties that had been happening at work and the impact it was having on me. So, this painting overall started to represent that moment, and I ended up painting what I had needed in that moment, or at least what that moment represented to me. So the act of completing this painting for me was a bit of a catharsis. Now, this doesn't mean that all my paintings have to have this kind of, deep and emotional meaning to me. Many of them I use to represent my journey through life, or to represent the calming effect being alone in nature has on me. So, my recommendation is for any artists out there who are just starting out, do some paintings without reference, and then take some time to really ponder why you made what you made and what that painting means in the context of your life, who you are, and what you do. In psychology, they use projection tests to measure personality traits and even test for things like autism. And how people draw things like a house or a tree says a lot about what they're going through, how they're feeling, and how they think. Personally, I believe that art is similar to this. If you're starting with a blank canvas or a board, and you let your creativity guide you, not only will you create something unique, but you'll also make a statement about you. In that way, your art should always matter to you. And that's why we do this, isn't it? As much as I love making videos, I paint because I love making art, and the sense of accomplishment when finishing a painting resonates with something central in me. As I experiment with other styles of art, making art that matters to me is going to be important. I don't want to go so far that I forget why I paint. I do it for me, and I do it because my art matters to me, and it has meaning in my life.